you both with PRAMA, because you work with cotton, but specifically Tobias. Can you share some of the opportunities for cotton from Africa today and the work that you're doing with the cotton industry in Africa specifically?
Yes, I think that you should use African cotton in Africa. Actually, 97% of the cotton produced in West Africa is exported. And exported not to other African countries, but to Asia or to other places. And this is just an ordinary commodity. So it is very much relying on the world market prices. And now we have this fight between China and the US, and so the cotton prices are dropped down fast, so all the cotton farmers have problems. And so I think really that we should use, put added value to the cotton farmers. So meaning that we should open markets internationally for organic and fair trade cotton, and use it locally, so having value added locally also in place. And then if we talked in the morning about circular economy, then we should also look only inside Africa, that you really should have the circle all inside Africa. It's a circular economy, meaning also local, and so really to look from raw material to reuse locally. And then there is a huge potential for everybody.
Thank you. And then continue with cotton, PRAMA, because the family-owned business at MANTISWORLD is supported by, I guess, would you say? So your company basically works from field to fashion. You know, you're working with the cotton to the final garment production. How important is it to have, vertically set up business in Africa? Which I know there's not many, but how important do you feel it is to have that? Maybe explain what that is in case people don't.
Sure. So when we talk about a vertical setup or a vertical supply chain, we're talking about all the different processes of production under the same roof. So in our case in Tanzania, we buy the ginned cotton from Tanzania within the country itself, and then we do everything after that. So we spin the yarn, we knit, we weave, we dye, we cut, make and sew. So that's all done literally under one very, very, very big roof.
It's amazing, guys.
Yeah, Jaqueline's been out there. And you're all welcome to visit. We're very, very transparent. It's extremely helpful for us because one of the issues, and we've heard this from various other panelists who've spoken, is continuity of supply. So you're in control, you have complete continuity, you have complete transparency, and that's really important. Is it necessary? No, absolutely not. There are plenty, so for example, we work with other CMT units in other countries, be it in Kenya or Rwanda, where they're buying the organic fabric from us, but because they've got maybe smaller setups, they can do smaller production runs, they can add different embellishments, so they can actually have the advantage of having all that transparency and provenance, but still make it the way they want. So I think what's more important than it being vertical and being owned by one specific person or organisation, it's more important to have that transparency throughout, whether it's your own organisation or someone else's. One thing that we do find it's really important to have a vertical setup is certification. So if certification is important to you, and it is to us, rather than having to certify 4 or 5 different units across the supply chain, you just do one, and that saves you several $1,000s.
And your one is fair trade?
No, we're not fair trade. We're got certified, OCS certified, we have SA 8000 and we have Ocotex.
Look at this. If you guys haven't heard of a lot of these are like at least the top 3 that I've heard that she's mentioned. So they're legit, okay, and they're awesome as well. I'm going to visit. So the scale of the work that you're doing is quite, probably as huge as Dominic, but it's quite a large scale in that sense. I'm going to come to you, Dominic, but I want to speak to the 2 ladies who have smaller units. with Sivan and with PAOLA, and maybe you can share the experience of just setting that up. Like maybe there's some people here are thinking, that sounds really great what PRAMA is doing, and you've heard about 15,000 workers at Dominic's HELA factory, or HELA factory, but you may just want to start small and get set up. Can you guys both share your experience of making that happen, and the level of your business, and just share what it's really like? Good, the bad, the ugly. Go on.
I start. Well, we started 6 years ago. Just going to Rwanda, finding the best tailors that could produce the clothing that we wanted, and we first started with just prints from the market.
How did you find them? One tailor, by the way.
How do you do that in Africa? You talk to people, or in Rwanda, you talk to people and you ask and you try to make samples and you see how they come out. And for us, it was very important to work based on equality, so we wanted to work also with people, to understand each other. So we ended up with 4, and we grew really organically, really slowly. How do you do it? Yeah, I think what for me is really important is really talking to each other and listening to each other. And we had to start small, because if you don't get the investment, or you get the investment from family and friends, then and you don't maybe have a 5-year plan, or you don't know exactly what you're doing, then you have to start small and just build it from there. What is difficult for us, which I hear in your story, is you can actually produce the cotton and have the whole value chain. And that's also where I want to go now, with sourcing organic cotton locally and producing designs. But that's like a whole different level, so it's really a scale up.
Well, there's a free trade agreement, so in areas in the Meier actually support in accessing those raw materials.
Yeah.
Meier. And PAOLA, some of the pitfalls that you've had, and some of the things that you need to adopt in order to set up a smaller unit.
So I think the first thing is that you've got to be in it for the long run. So these things don't happen quickly. So I think it's, you just have to have that mindset and that expectation that it's a long-term partnership. And then for me, the other key word is really partnerships, because although we started as a charitable project training people, so we didn't find the tailors, but we trained them because we particularly wanted to work with women, we particularly wanted to work with disadvantaged women. So sort of we went out there and said, okay, how can we give you the skills that you need to do what you want to do to be successful? So although we took that approach, it really is a constant partnership. You have to have partnerships with your employees, you have to have partnerships with your training suppliers, with your fabric suppliers, with your customers, with your partners that we've done some work with Vikki and Proudly Made in Africa, some collaborations there. We've worked with organic cotton grown in Uganda to be able to have certified cotton from Africa, although it goes comes to Germany and then it comes back, so that was just a bit of a weird one, but it's sort of, I think the value of partnerships is incredible. You just have to really build those relationships and nurture them. And then the other thing that I would say to anyone thinking about starting something similar is you've got to do your homework. Because you wouldn't believe the amount of people that come to us without having done their homework, and then it's so much harder for them and for us and for everyone else. You would never start a restaurant without either having a chef or knowing how to cook. So similarly, you wouldn't start a fashion business without either having those skills in-house or someone that can, that you can rely on that has those skills, because it's an incredibly complex industry. There's so many steps. Complexities around when you import your materials, when you work with what's locally available, like all those decisions, you kind of need to work through them. And you might not have all the answers, but I think you kind of need to have that attitude of, being really disciplined and doing the homework.
Absolutely, and that's just on the smaller scale. So, Dominic, with the factories that you have, specifically the ones in Kenya and Ethiopia, maybe you can share a bit more, because you produce for others.
Correct.
Sivan produces your own brand, and MAYAMIKO is own brand plus others as well, but yours is specifically for others and larger scale retailers. maybe share a bit more about that level of setup, and then if you can just share about that level of setup and how you got started with that really.
Well, majority, if not all of our customers that we export to from Ethiopia and Kenya are US based. Under AGOA, they have considerable savings, particularly for a product like a lady synthetic knicker. Savings can be up to 32%. So if you're spending $100 million with HELA on underwear in Sri Lanka, and HELA says, we could probably save you $32 million in taxes if you work for us in Kenya. Customers like it. Interestingly, a lot of people, I think the British buyers, assumed that manufacturing in Ethiopia and Kenya would be cheaper than Bangladesh. That hasn't been the case. If anything, we charge the same price for a product out of Kenya and Ethiopia as what we do in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is not a cheap place to manufacture, but on a landed basis, the goods are considerably cheaper. So often, I often say that free trade agreements don't necessarily create trade. It's the businesses, the entrepreneurs, the investors who will generate that trade. But I think under AGOA, we have seen a considerable amount of investment in particular Ethiopia, for example, where manufacturers are going there to give their customers the duty benefits. We've had some conversations today about trade wars. We're effectively trade war immune. So as an organisation, we're duty free to over 90% of the world. Interestingly, the majority of our fabric comes from China. That's can be up to 70% of the cost of goods. They're landing in the US duty free. So Africa is performing extremely well as a conduit to circumnavigate the trade wars. But it is a difficult place to do business. Fortunately, I think going back to the question, how did we get started? To some degree it was plug and play. I mean, my hair was a lot longer. I'm starting to lose it now. But the facility that we have in Ethiopia was a world-class facility with huge investment from the Chinese and the British and various other aid and development agencies in an area called Hawassa. They're purpose-built factories. Shells, we had to do the work ourselves in Kenya. We're in a EPZ, which is in Ati River. It's about 20 minutes outside of Nairobi. You know, there has been a lot of investment into infrastructure. Those of you that question organisations like UKAID and why should you be paying taxes towards them, well, quite frankly, we couldn't do business in these parts of the world without the investment by those aid agencies. So cost of business has come down significantly. The interesting thing though is, I always say on paper, Africa is the most exciting continent. And as we dig into certain countries on the continent, it gets better and better. But the reality is, it's not always the same in the way it translates. So there's some of the challenges that we have to work with. But we did things very differently. We put people first. My business is my people are the business. We are hand in hand in that. And our future CEOs and leaders of our organisations are the Kenyan and Ethiopian people working within the organisation alongside them.
It's amazing. People first, people first. Thank you for that. It's really enlightening. And just in regards to that, with yourself and Dominic and with PRAMA, how far do you feel that Africa has moved within the context of becoming that continent and that market option for garment production? Do you think let's say over the last 10 years, do you think there's been a real far movement, or would you say it's still the same as more people are opening the ground? So what would you say in the last 10 years of doing business?
Well, my expertise really is Tanzania more than the continent as a whole, so I can speak in very broad terms, but not in detail about other countries. Certainly there's been, as Dominic said, Ethiopia and Kenya have done a lot in terms of expanding their textile manufacturing and garment manufacturing bases. I think that I still feel that there's a lot more talk than real action. That's my feeling, and I can't give you numbers to back that up, but that is really my feeling. And I think it's great to have all these people saying we want to create this environment, we want to build this, but actually it's a complex set of circumstances to look at, particularly when you look at the amount of investment it takes to really cover the capital intensive side. You know, setting up a sewing factory actually doesn't take us that much money, but if you want to set up a spinning mill or a dye house, you're talking, and doing it properly in a way where you're looking after the environment, it's done safely, it's an awful lot of investment. And then we're talking about a lot, I mean, we saw it happen in Tanzania, we had a lot of Asian investment come in, and I'm sure it's very different from what Dominic's story is, but it was really to try and catch that AGOA duty-free, and really what they were doing was chasing cheap production costs. And
that doesn't exist.
And
it's just not there, the cheap production.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly Bangladesh is as cheap as you're going to get, but if you're trying to get a cheaper landed cost, then chances are you're not going to, you know, many buyers are not going to worry too much about what the long-term prospect of the environmental or the ethical standards are, because they just want the cheapest landed cost possible. So it's a whole host of very, very complex things. So certainly from a Tanzanian perspective, I don't see it growing. As for the rest of the continent, I'm not sure, but I feel like we've been having this conversation for many years now, and I haven't seen that star rise as much as I would like to.
And Jackie, just to put some numbers behind that, I think, I would agree with you that it is exciting, and I don't want to come here today and put a dampener on the energy that I can feel in the room, because, as Dominic said, Africa is the most exciting place to be production-wise, and people should be thinking about shifting their supply if they're not already in the process of shifting, because if they don't act now, they will get left behind. However, I've been working in, around, and then with the African continent in terms of supply for the past 6 years or so, and we are still having the same conversations of, oh, it's exciting, there's the possibility of a fully vertical and transparent supply chain. And the fact of the matter is, the ship is not steering fast enough towards the continent. So in terms of numbers, when I joined Proudly Made in Africa 3 years ago, Proudly Made in Africa, one of their strong suits is the research we put into export from the continent and import into the continent. So the real numbers about trade with and from Africa. And the fact of the matter is, when I started in 2016, Africa represented less than 2% of the world's exports and less than 2% of the world's imports. And since then, we are now speaking 2019, it's dropped to 1%. And this is with every government in the developed world saying that we want to focus on Africa, we want 50-50 trade, reciprocity. It's not happening, and maybe if it is happening, it's not happening fast enough.
Okay, I could say that maybe some of that is around what people are trading these days, and a kind of
it's still commodities, still
the raw materials or the finished goods as well. Like when it comes to trade, is that general for everything, raw and finished, or is that? We need to dive into those figures to see what they're expressing. Are you going to say something?
No, I was just thinking about. See, one of the challenges, and I don't want to point a finger at any country in particular. But when I get an order from the US, let's for argument's sake, that order's $10 million. Straight away I send $7 million to a country outside the African continent. Straight away. Then we have our banking charges, finance charges, electricity, probably owned by foreign. And I'm not an advocate of protectionism, but I'm just talking you through why the growth is not coming there. We send effectively salaries, we're a tax-free business, tax-free for the next 20 years, so we're not paying taxes. It's not my choice, but it's just the way that the systems are set up. I can't sell anything domestically. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't sell the Calvin Kleins that I make in Kenya.
That's where you are, because of where you're based.
Because where we're based. So what happens is they'll probably go to Europe, go back to Dubai, and then come in to Kenya. Hence, cost of goods are very expensive, so making it prohibitive for people to have these brands. So when we're getting that $10 million order, let's say we ship it out, truthfully, how much of that $10 million has gone into Kenya? Very, very little. Very little. And yet the GDP numbers reported, because they take in the bill of ladings and the exports on the TUs going out, the containers, we're seeing GDP growth yeah, there's huge capital flight. In Ethiopia, the government is broke, it has no dollars to pay anyone. Civil servants aren't getting paid for months. The economy's growing. So these are the challenges that we face. Now, we're somewhat protected from it because we operate and we know how to operate in those environments. But it's back to your point on the growth. The growth is extremely challenging because the international community, I feel, has approached it the wrong way around. It's taken in the non-value add. I mean, you have a mill in Tanzania, I can't even buy from Tanzanian mills. It's very difficult. A to Z, we're a big operator, we're trying to be development, we can't get the product. I mean, and what's happened is the value that is being created is not being created, the monetary value is not being created in the countries. And that's my huge concern. But we talk about the mills and the cotton, like we have to get the vertical going for the cotton, we have to get the mills there, because we're growing cotton in Kenya and ginning it in India, dyeing it in China and sending it back, and the money's not in the country, on the continent. So these are these challenges that are stifling growth. And we've taken the cheap bit, and everyone thought it was going to be cheaper, but it hasn't been.
Well, what about the CMT, okay, so Bangladesh doesn't grow cotton.
But they're extremely efficient.
Exactly, and one of the cheapest, as you're saying. So modelling, is that a good model, or is that just a model that's existed that supported the fast fashion industry? Is this the way we should be shifting our supply and replicating these kind of models?
Yes, so we've been...
Because you've worked with Bangladesh as well.
and we've been working with Bangladesh for many, many years. When I first went to Bangladesh in the 90s, I kind of said, there's no way I would send my dog into one of those factories. It's changed hugely, hugely. And this is a cycle of development. And I think if we look at every textile producing country in history, it starts off like this. You start off really focusing on cheap, docile labour. And then as the economy flourishes, as that it develops. So Bangladesh now is not just doing CMT. They have some of the best dye houses I've seen. Some amazing spinning. The number of spinners that are now in Bangladesh has grown massively, and they're doing recycled this, hemp that, every sort of fibre in a way that is fully certified, clean, transparent. So that has taken 15, 20 years for them to get to that stage. So I think we have to be realistic on where we start and understand that actually the reason why the big US brands are coming into places like the sub-Saharan Africa is because they want a better landed cost, and wages in Ethiopia are some of the lowest. So it's a step-by-step approach, and going back to the value added, if that 70% of that 7 million, we could cut that down to 5 million of the order, that's huge. So let's start looking at, if rather than just doing CMT, what's the one before that? Can we look at knitting and dyeing? Can that happen? And if that can't happen in that particular country, then, me, Jaqueline, I'm always going on about regional trade, but if these regional trades actually can get implemented, actually can really work, we can send, and Dominic, let's talk later, but we can send our, fabrics from Tanzania into Ethiopia, or from, why are we buying them from China?
Why are we buying them from China? Speak about Bangladesh and similarities or non-similarities.
Similarities and non-similarities. So I think, just to echo what Dominic and PRAMA, Dominic said, yes, Bangladesh is massively efficient, and I think it's important to just reiterate what PRAMA said. Now they are, 15, 20 years ago, they absolutely were not. I think the light bulb moment for me in Bangladesh when I was a fashion buyer for Primark was in 2011. My senior buyer came back from her sourcing trip. She had done China, normally she kind of trawls the east coast of China and then catches the flight to Dhaka, and whatever orders she hadn't given to Chinese suppliers, she would give the mop-up orders to the Bangladeshis. Wow. She would kind of say, well, they know how to do vests and they know how to do basic jersey, and that's about it. I'll give all my complicated stuff to the Chinese suppliers because they're the ones that have the market cornered there. And in 2011 she came home and she said, you know what, I'm not sure what the Chinese suppliers are going to get this year. Bangladesh has stepped it up. They can do the knitting, they can do argyle, they can do breakers, all of these really complex finishes and treatments. The Bangladeshi suppliers could do it, and they could do it cheaper than China. So all of a sudden, it felt in the moment like it was overnight, everything just shifted down. Now, I haven't got the bird's eye view to know why that happened. I don't know if there was a massive CapEx investment. I don't know if the British Council or DFID just dropped a chunk of cash. I don't know if there was a Damien there, or excuse me, Dominic, for clarity. I don't know if there was a Dominic right there in 2011, but something happened for that to happen. And I hear the same conversations happening about Ethiopia now, and I have the same conversations as well. The conversation saying, yeah, basic jersey, Ethiopia can do it all day long. When you're asking for a marrow mix, you're talking about importing polyester. When you're talking about maybe a vertical transparent supply chain on a woven line rather than a knitted line, you're going to have to export that to be woven and then import it back in, and that's the project that PAOLA and I worked on last year. That's what we had to do. And interestingly enough, that was for a customer that wanted African prints made vertically in Africa, and the supply chain just didn't exist.
How long that was?
Yeah, so
I think the other thing is that you obviously have a volume gain, which is what we've talked about here. There's also the other side of it, which is actually a luxury gain, so it's smaller volumes, but higher margins that we can look at. And I don't know how those two stack up in terms of economic development, but certainly from our point of view, where we're looking at a world where we're trying to promote a more responsible consumption, we certainly want to make less, make better, higher value, higher prices, you know, but and less of the mass volume. So I think there is also, I don't think it's either or, but I think that there's obviously both sides to look at. You know, not everyone can be, you know, mass scale and sort of generic basics. You know, there's definitely a need for that, but also I think in terms of sort of aesthetic and culture and, you know, just the beauty of the garment, there's the kind of, you know, higher margins, smaller volume play for sure.
And it's those layers, sorry Jack, it's those layers that are going to really solidify the industry and the market. Like, it can't be all massive volumes that you can't then sell on in country. It has to be the space for the creatives and the space for the high-end makers to deliver to the smaller buyers who want to buy from Africa for whatever reason. Yeah.
Everything is, different levels are needed. I was going to invite you, Tobias, to really bring it, before we open up for questions, to bring it back to cotton industry and about sourcing textiles and the realities of really sourcing those from Africa. I know you're saying value addition is lost, but what other options are you seeing then within cotton, which is your specialty?
So I just want to add to the discussion that Ethiopia now should become the new Bangladesh, and there is, I think this is a deadly competition. And then finally, if you only concentrate on prices and quantities, then you will have to squeeze the workers or the nature. And this is this could be an option for Africa. But I think it's not the right option, because afterwards there are others coming. So we should learn from there and really looking at added value and really looking at local consumption and being proud also to ask for 100% Africa, proudly made in Africa, and so really to focus on this. And not, we have to have in mind quantities, economies of scales. That's very important. You talked about partnership. I think this is key. Partnership, vertical, horizontal. We have to work together if you want to have an added value. If you talk about certifications, there, if we are all stuck in small quantities, and then the costs are incredibly high. So if we really could combine it, work together, then we could be competitive, not selling $5 t-shirts, but $12 t-shirts and with a really added value. And then talking also about climate change questions, in cotton now we are working arguing about organic cotton from West Africa that is 30% less using CO2. And if you combine it with activities with the farmers, then you can even promote a CO2 neutral cotton from Africa. And then if you pay a fair price, this can really build a big added value for all the buyers.
Thank you. I think Sivan's got
I just wanted to say I've worked on the brand for 6 years.
Yeah.
Pretty small scale. I'm now relaunching, doing my branding again. Gonna include the whole production line, and I'm just very open to collaborations as I'm at the start.
Awesome.
It's not money to spend, so everyone who is interested, I would love that.
It's good.